Hello and welcome to Live Interactive English. My name is Sydney.
And my name is Karen. Today we are looking at day one of our story and it's called The Prince and the Pauper. Well, this is actually a very famous story that a lot of you probably have heard of. Two people looking identical, meaning they look exactly the same, but they live very different lives, right?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story, and I think I remember being in maybe middle school or high school and reading about the story and thinking how it was very interesting because I don't know about you, but I went to school with actually quite a few twins.
Oh, okay.
Quite a few identical twins that always looked exactly the same. Sometimes they would dress the same. They would even sound the same. And it was very, very difficult to tell them apart.
That's right.
But they had very different personalities. So their personalities kind of gave them away. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, my mom has a twin sister and they are identical twins. So ever since they were little, they looked exactly the same. And like you said, they always wore the same clothes. So sometimes my mom would go to, school for her sister when the sister is skipping class. And then, something like that. They would do something or play some tricks on other people.
Yeah.
But then they have very, very different personalities. So they have different lives as well. It is very interesting. But I've always wanted to have twins, like twin babies. They're so cute.
They're so cute. Yeah, you can dress them up and you can dress them the same, do their hair the same, same clothes, take pictures until eventually they do end up growing up a little bit and, kind of developing their personalities, of course.
Exactly. You can only do that when they are little, right? Well, however, today we're going to be looking at this classic story, The Prince and the Pauper, and let's check it out.
On the same autumn day in 16th century London, two identical boys were born, but under very different circumstances. Edward Tudor, heir to the king, was born in a magnificent castle and welcomed by all of England. Meanwhile, in a dark and dirty alley, Tom Canty was born into a family that didn't want him. While Edward slept on soft sheets and was cared for by nobles, Tom grew up surrounded by violence and hunger. Despite his challenging life, Tom found happiness and comfort in stories. A kind priest taught him to read, and Tom's imagination became filled with tales of princes and royal courts.
All right, everyone, let's dive into today's article, today's topic, which is titled The Prince and the Pauper, Day 1, which is about two boys who were born on the same day. They end up kind of looking identical. They're not actually twins, but they do end up looking exactly the same, but they end up to lead very different lives.
That's right. It sounds very, very interesting. Let's dive right into it. On the same autumn day in 16th century London, two identical boys were born, but under very different circumstances. Okay, so two identical boys. We're talking about this word identical, and that is an adjective. Identical means exactly the same, alike in every way, like finding two perfectly matching toys or identical twins. For kids, it's like having two red balls that look exactly the same, not even one tiny difference. So they are identical. An example sentence would be Julie and Alice are twins and they look identical. And not all twins look identical, right?
Yeah, that's true. Some twins, I guess you could say the opposite of identical when it comes to twins would be fraternal. So meaning they have the same mom, they have the same dad, same birthday, but they just look a little bit different from one another.
That's right.
Yeah. And our other vocabulary word is the word circumstance, and that's a noun. Now, a circumstance is just a condition or a state of being that's relevant to a specific event. So, for example, we could say, depending on the circumstance, some rules can be changed. Yeah, and as we know, some people are born under very good circumstances with a great home and two loving parents and a big backyard. Some people are born under kind of not so great circumstances, or maybe they have a little bit less. Yeah, all right, let's continue. So it says here, Edward Tudor, heir to the king, was born in a magnificent castle and welcomed by all of England. Meanwhile, in a dark and dirty alley, Tom Canty was born into a family that didn't want him. Okay, so Edward was born under really nice, lavish, cushy circumstances, while Tom was born under much harsher circumstances, unfortunately.
That's right. Okay, how about let's go over to Henny first, and we will be right back.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。这一次要读的故事是 The Prince and the Pauper 乞丐王子。那故事背景是在16世纪的伦敦，两个长得一模一样的男孩诞生了，但是他们的境遇却是天差地别。一个是王位继承人 Edward Tudor， 那么诞生于宏伟的城堡里面；另外一个是 Tom Canty， 他出生在阴暗肮脏小巷的一个家庭里。好，我们先来看单字 identical， 它是形容完全相同的、一模一样的或是极其相似的。例句里面有提到双胞胎，那我们补充一下 identical twins 就可以表达同卵双胞胎。如果是 fraternal twins 则表示异卵双胞胎。下一个单字 circumstance， 它是名词，表示情况、形式，常常用复数形。我们可以用 under 或是 in 什么什么 circumstances 去表达在什么样的情况下。Sydney 老师在解释单字时用到 relevant 这个形容词，是指有关的、相关的。另外，老师在讲到 Edward 他的境遇时，用到形容词 lavish， 这可以形容奢华的、豪华的或是挥霍的；还有用到 cushy， 则可以形容是轻松的、容易的或是舒适的。介华课文中。
Thank you, Henny, and now we are back. Now let's continue with our story. Well, Edward slept on soft sheets and was cared for by nobles. Tom grew up surrounded by violence and hunger. Aw, that is really, really sad. It's really unfortunate too. Some people are very lucky, while some others may not be. Now we're looking at this word here, noble, and we're looking at it as a noun. It just means a person, someone from a special high-class family with titles like a prince, princess, duke, or count, or someone rewarded with land and titles for service. An example sentence would be, many nobles had great power in ancient times.
All right, let's continue. So, despite his challenging life, Tom found happiness and comfort in stories. Okay, a kind priest taught him to read, and Tom's imagination became filled with tales of princes and royal courts. Okay, so even though Tom was not born under the best of circumstances, it sounded like he kind of made do with what he had, and he used his imagination, and thank goodness he met a really kind priest. And, you know, he didn't really have much, but he was working with what he had.
Exactly, and sometimes this is what you have to do in life, right? You're not always that lucky to be born with a lot of wonderful things around you.
Yeah, exactly. All right, now I think we can go to Hanny.
Edward 睡在柔软的床单上，由贵族照料。那么 Tom 则是在暴力跟饥饿当中长大。尽管生活艰辛，他在故事里面找到了快乐和慰藉。有一位善良的神父教他读书认字，那么 Tom 的想象世界就充满了王子跟宫廷的故事。好，单字 noble 它是名词，表达贵族。Karen 老师在解释贵族时有提到 duke， 那就是指公爵。Count 则是指伯爵。那这边有一个重点是 despite 加上名词或动名词，可以表达尽管、虽然怎么样。Despite 是介系词，它相当于片语 in spite of， 它们后面可以接名词或动名词。例如 They went for a walk despite the rain。尽管下雨，他们还是去散步。那一个延伸学习是 despite 后面如果要接子句的话，必须先加上名词同位语，像是 the fact， 然后再接 that 子句，那就会写作 despite the fact that 主词加动词。像刚刚的例句也可以写作 They went for a walk despite the fact that it was raining。好，那我们接回到课文中。
Thank you, Henny, and now we are back. Okay, so from our story so far, we know that we have two boys, Edward and also Tom, who were born into two very different circumstances, right? Now, Edward was being well cared for, while Tom was not so lucky because he was not really wanted. However, though, he was also lucky in a way because a kind priest was nice enough to teach him how to read, so he could use his imagination and then think about stories and kind of indulge himself in different tales.
All right, now in in the second part, I think we're going to hear more about these two identical boys. All right, so let's go to the second part of the story, and we'll be right back.
One cold January day, Tom wandered to the king's palace. Through the golden gates, he saw a boy his age dressed in elegant silk and jewels. Tom pressed his face against the bars for a better look, but a guard rudely pushed him away. The young prince was furious and said, "How dare you treat my father's subject that way? Let him in." Prince Edward felt sorry for Tom and invited him to eat. As they talked, the two boys were fascinated by the vast differences in each other's lives. They imagined what it would be like to live in each other's shoes.
Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, we were looking at the story between Edward and also Tom, who looked exactly the same. They looked identical, but they were born into different circumstances, right? But right now, I wonder if these two characters are going to meet each other.
Let's see. Let's find out. Let's keep reading. All right. It says here, one cold January day, Tom wandered to the king's palace. Through the golden gates, he saw a boy his age dressed in elegant silk and jewels. Ooh.
I think it's talking about Edward.
I think so. I think you might be right. Now, we do have our vocabulary word here, which is the word elegant. And elegant is an adjective. And elegant just means very fancy, beautiful, classy, and usually oftentimes very expensive clothes or items. So, for example, we could say, the restaurant looked elegant and expensive.
That's right. Okay, so we know that Tom notices the little boy who's dressed very elegantly, but now what's going to happen? Now Tom pressed his face against the bars for a better look because maybe he's still a little bit far away. He cannot see the boy very clearly. He can only see his clothes. So he pressed his face against the bars for a better look. But a guard rudely pushed him away. Oh, so I'm guessing it's the guard for maybe the castle, right?
Yeah, probably. I'm assuming, you know, when it comes to kings and queens and royal courts and royalty, they typically have a lot of guards and security wanting to keep, I guess, outsiders away and as far as possible.
That's right, but rudely push him away, that means being really, really impolite, right? You say, hey, you, get away from the gates. Ah, okay. I wonder what's going to happen next. But before we find out, let's go over to Hanny.
在一个寒冷的1月天 ，Tom 他游荡到王宫，他从金色的栅门看到一个跟自己年纪差不多的男孩，身穿精致的丝绸衣裳，佩戴着珠宝。那么 Tom 就把脸贴在栏杆上，想要看得更清楚。可是有一个卫兵就粗暴地把他推开。好，来看单字 elegant， 它是形容词，形容精致的、优雅的。Sydney 老师这时候用到 classy 这个形容词，也可以形容是时髦优雅的，或者是高级豪华的。那我们接回到课文中。
All right, let's continue with our article. So we know that Tom kind of pressed his face up against the gate to kind of get a better look at the boy who was dressed in very elegant clothes. So it says here, the young prince, meaning Edward, the young prince was furious and said, "How dare you treat my father's subject that way? Let him in." Prince Edward felt sorry for Tom and invited him to eat. Okay, so it sounds like Edward might actually be kind of kind. Yes. Even though he's a prince and he's a royal, it sounds like he has a lot of compassion for his father's subject, his father meaning the king and his subject meaning the people that kind of live in the kingdom or in the king's land. He says, hey, why are you pushing this subject or this little boy away? You know, you should treat everyone with respect, treat him nicely, and please let him in. And he lets him in and invites him in to eat.
That's right. Oh, I like this guy.
Yeah, I like him. That's very kind of him.
Exactly. Okay, let's continue. As they talked, the two boys were fascinated by the vast differences in each other's lives. They imagined what it would be like to live in each other's shoes. Okay, we're talking about the vast differences. What does it mean when I say vast? Well, now it's an adjective. Vast means extremely large in size, amount, or area, like huge or enormous, like it's something so big that you can't see the end, like the sky or ocean. So the vast differences, that means there's so many different things in their lives that are different. An example sentence would be, Sasha has a vast knowledge of Spanish history. That means she has a lot of knowledge of Spanish history.
And it sounds like they're talking about what it's like to kind of walk in each other's shoes or kind of swap places or live each other's lives, essentially. We say that a lot in English, walk in someone else's shoes to kind of relate to them and see what their life is like. Yeah. All right, now I think we can swing it on over to Hanny.
All right.
看到卫兵粗暴地把 Tom 推开，这个王子 Edward 他就很愤怒地说：“你竟敢如此对待我父王的子民，把他放进来。” Edward 他为 Tom 感到难过，于是就邀请他一起用餐。那在聊天过程中，这两个男孩就对彼此的生活这种天壤之别感到很着迷。他们就想象着，如果互换身份，生活会是什么模样。好，来看单字 vast。它是形容词，形容巨大的或是广阔的、广大的。Sydney 老师提到 Edward 他富有同情心，那么 compassion 这个字就可以表达同情或是恻隐之心。这边有两个重点，第一个是介绍 dare 的用法。Dare 在文中当助动词，后面要接原形动词，常常会用 how dare 主词加动词去表达某人竟敢怎么样怎么样，这带有反问的语气，常常是用来表达愤怒、震惊或是强烈不满。那常常见于是比较正式或是比较带戏剧性效果的语境当中。例如 How dare you blame me for your mistakes？ 你竟敢把你的错怪到我身上。好，那另外在否定句中也可以用 dare not 加原形动词去表达不敢怎么样怎么样。例如 They dare not take the risk， 他们不敢冒这个险。那第二个重点是 in somebody's shoes， 是表达处在某人的情况立场。这个片语字面意思是穿着某人的鞋子，那引申表示处在某人的立场或处境，那常常用来劝人要设身处地为他人着想。其他相关用法还有 put oneself in somebody's shoes， 就是设身处地站在某人的立场着想。还有 fill somebody's shoes， 则是表达接替某人的工作、地位或是职务。我们这边造两个例句。If you put yourself in his shoes, you'll understand why he did that. 如果你站在他的立场，就会明白他为何会那样做。另外一个例句是 I wonder who will fill her shoes after she retires. 我想知道她退休后谁会接替她的职位。好，那接话课文中。
Thank you, Henny. And now we are back. Okay, so now we know the two main characters. Well, Tom and Edward have finally met. And we know that Edward is actually a kind prince, right? Because someone was being rude. The guard was being rude to Tom. But then Edward invited him in and started chatting with him and talking about each other's lives. And they both tried to imagine what their lives would be like if they swap places.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, now I wonder what's going to happen when they swap places. You think it's going to be good or bad? What do you think?
I don't know. Maybe good. It's always good or, very interesting to try to live in, another person's life, right?
Yeah. All right. So we are going to review the story again, and we will see you tomorrow.
See you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.
On the same autumn day in 16th century London, two identical boys were born, but under very different circumstances. Edward Tudor, heir to the king, was born in a magnificent castle and welcomed by all of England. Meanwhile, in a dark and dirty alley, Tom Canty was born into a family that didn't want him. While Edward slept on soft sheets and was cared for by nobles, Tom grew up surrounded by violence and hunger. Despite his challenging life, Tom found happiness and comfort in stories. A kind priest taught him to read, and Tom's imagination became filled with tales of princes and royal courts. One cold January day, Tom wandered to the king's palace. Through the golden gates, he saw a boy his age dressed in elegant silk and jewels. Tom pressed his face against the bars for a better look, but a guard rudely pushed him away. The young prince was furious and said, "How dare you treat my father's subject that way? Let him in." Prince Edward felt sorry for Tom and invited him to eat. As they talked, the two boys were fascinated by the vast differences in each other's lives. They imagined what it would be like to live in each other's shoes.
最后我们来复习今天课文里的单字文法。单字的部分有 identical 是形容完全相同的、一模一样的或是极其相似的。circumstance 名词表示情况、形式。Noble 这个名词它表示贵族，那么 elegant 是形容精致的、优雅的。再看到 vast 是形容词，形容巨大的、广阔的或是广大的。文法的部分，第一个学到 despite 加名词或动名词，表示尽管、虽然怎么样怎么样。第二个学到 dare 的用法，我们可以用 how dare 主词加动词表达某人竟敢怎么样，也可以用 dare not 加动词去表达不敢怎么样怎么样。那么第三个学到 in somebody's shoes 是指处在某人的情况或立场。那以上是今天的讲解，同学们别走开，马上回来哦。
Out with the old and in with the new. What used to be old dormitories, places where several people lived together, has now become an epicenter of creativity and art. Today, we will introduce Green Ray.
Green Ray is a marketplace redeveloped from 12 old buildings. These buildings used to be the dorms for Taiwan Water Corporation's workers. Now, they are a collection of designer and art stores. The marketplace sells handmade goods, art pieces, and accessories. You can also stop for a snack or a drink after a great day of shopping. Plus, you can even make your own perfumes.
Green Ray hopes to promote the brilliance and talent of Taiwanese artists. So, if you consider yourself a connoisseur of the arts, you should definitely visit Green Ray.